welcome. And please, by all means, make comments. And if you're watching this recording, I appreciate hearing from you. If you like it, please indicate that. And also, if you have any questions or comments, really look forward to seeing them. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. So this is where we're at right now, and we're in the midst of this conversation that Balaam is having with his donkey, with his she-ass, is what it's sometimes translated as. So right here in this particular verse is where God, quote, opens up the mouth of the donkey. And she asks, what did I do to you that you have beaten me 3 times? And there's some interesting comments on that. You can check yesterday's session, which just got posted maybe 10 minutes ago. Vayomer Balaam la'aton. So Balaam says to the aton, to the she-ass, ki hitalalt bi, because you, and this is according to the Targum, you mocked me. And here's the Targum, the Aramaic word, right? Chayicht bi. You kind of laughed at me. You made a mockery of me. Lu yesh cherev biyadi. Had I not had a sword in my hands, ki atah haraktich, I would have killed you. I would have killed you. So again, we're going to sort of push the meaning of this verse. What is this? What is this communicating? Right. So this is Rashi here. Hitalalt. So this word hitalalt, Rashi's of course sensitive to Hebrew words that aren't so common, and sometimes lihitalel is to play with. But here he says kitargumo. He refers back to the Aramaic translation, and he says lashon. It has the connotation of ganai, contempt, or disgrace. Bizayon. Those are synonyms essentially. They mean the same kind of thing. So mocking, making a fool out of me, something like that, right? So here goes an interesting sort of inference from the next statement he makes. Lu yesh cherev biyadi. Had I not a sword in my hand, were it not for the fact that I don't have a sword in my hand, right? So he says, just commenting on that phrase, Rashi says, Genut gedula hayalo. This was actually an embarrassing, shameful statement to himself. Right? He just made a shameful admission. Davar zeh. This statement of his was a shameful admission. Be'einei hasarim, in the eyes of the chieftains who were going along with him. Remember, he wasn't by himself, and they heard him say this, right? Zeh holech, this is the point. Zeh holech laharog umash lema befiv. This one, that is Balaam, is going to go to destroy an entire nation just through his mouth. But when it comes to dispatching this donkey, he needs a sword, right? So what kind of business is this? So in other words, he's just undermined his whole enterprise in a way. And of course, we know that, in fact, that's what's going to happen ultimately. So Rashi's pulling out for us some really beautiful literary strands within the language of the story itself. Vatomer ha'aton. So the donkey is going to respond, and she says, El Balaam, to Balaam, Halo anochi atoncha. Indeed, she says, I am your she-ass, asher rachavta alai me'odcha ad hayom hazeh, upon whom you have ridden from the very beginning until today. And of all these years, I've been your faithful donkey. Hahasken hiskanti lasot lechako. Was I ever in the habit of treating you like this? Vayomer lo. And he said to her, no. So tell me, who do you think got the better of the argument? He had to stand down. So remember, this is the guy who's supposedly such a good spokesperson, right? That he's going to be able to destroy this entire people, and he's losing an argument with a donkey. And that's part of this literary element of the story. And of course, it's trying on a theological level, it's saying something else. Point that I'm making, and unfortunately, this is going to be a great contrast, and in fact, maybe a general commentary on human behavior. So I'm going to anticipate. Remember, this is all going on unbeknownst to the Israelites. They have no idea what's going on here. And really and truly, God is acting on their behalf without them even realizing it. And at the very end of this Parsha, they're going to behave in a way that's about as unappreciative as you can imagine. And in some ways, of course, it parallels what happened at the sin of the golden calf, at the end of when they had heard the Ten Commandments. And the extrapolation is, look at the blessings we actually experience every day, many of which we're not even aware of, and we don't even try to. This is not a new message, okay? That part of what we have to develop, if we're going to develop a spiritual, religious attitude, is not to take anything for granted, and not to simply overlook, but to try and piece out and actually see the incredible world in which we live and the degree to which we are actually taken care of. And so that's, I believe, the message that this is trying to say in a non-preachy kind of way, but trying to help us become sensitized to that. Okay, let's take a look at this. Verse 30. Ha hiskein hiskanti, right? And he says, ketargumo. So again, Rashi's heading back into the Targum, and I pointed this out where it says, Hamelaf alifna, leme'ebad. So Aleph, the word Aleph, right? We know it's the first letter of the alphabet. It also means to learn, okay? To learn. Was I in the practice? In other words, had I learned to act? Lame'abad means to act, lacha, towards you. So in other words, was I in the habit? Had I become habituated? In other words, learned to treat you like this? So interesting, right? The very first letter of the alphabet has the other meaning of to learn, to study. And I remember a doctor in Canton, Ohio, and maybe you heard of him, I don't know, Lanny Nell, actually an orthopedist, who said something that I'll never forget, which is, what is the purpose of life? Purpose of life is to learn, to learn. That's the purpose. Anyway, so that's how Rashi takes care of it here. And then he quotes Job 22, Hala'el. Let's gonna guess, I don't have the vowels here, okay? So I'd have to look, but there's the Sakain, right? Yisakein Gever, and I may be pronouncing this wrongly, right? So in other words, does a person teach God? Right? Is that, and then he's asking, of course, emphatically, and as a not, it's not a real question, right? It's just out of an expression of surprise, right? V'rabotenu darshu, and our
So,
sages.
Rabbi,
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
So the word Aleph is that not related to Aleph 1000?
It is it's spelt the same way, but Aleph, and in that sense also means to learn. Yes, it may be
but
related to the word thousand, but I'm not sure what the connection would be. But you're right. The word elef does mean 1,000, and it is the same. They're the same letters. Did you have a follow-up thought? Okay.
no.
Okay. And if I'm pronouncing words wrong, and I know you're driving, so you don't have the text in front of you with the correct vowels. So let me keep going. I don't want to take up the time to look up a text which would have the vowels for the point that we want to make. The Rabotenu Darshu, and our sages interpreted Mikrazeh, this particular scriptural passage, Bagamara, in the Gemara, right, in the Talmud, in the Babylonian Talmud. Amru they said to him, that is the people who were with him, the chieftains who were with him, they said to him, my Tama, what's the reason? Lo rachavta asusya. Why didn't you ride on a horse, right? What's a sort of more honorable way to transportation, a horse or a donkey? So I think it's probably a universal value that riding a horse is more honorable than riding a donkey. Amar lahum, so he said to them, Beretiva shad'ai le. He said, oh, I've put it in the meadow. I've put the horse in the meadow to pasture, etc. Kede'ita b'mesechet avodah zara. And he says, as in the tractate Avodah Zara. So Rashi gives us a reference into the Talmud with this conversation, this whole conversation that is interpreted through the rabbis. Okay. Going on. I'm going to leave it there right now. We got a bunch of here. We're into 31 here. Vaigal Hashem et einei Balaam. So at this point, God opens up the eyes of Balaam. Vayar et malach Hashem. And he saw the angel of God, Nitzav Baderech, standing up in front of him in the way. Vecharbo shlufa biyado, and his sword, the angel's sword, is drawn in his hand. It's set out against him, right? Vayikod, and he bowed down, Balaam bowed down, vayishtachu la'apav, and he prostrated before him. Okay. He bowed down, he put his head down before him. I think there's no Rashi on this. Vayomer elav malach, and the angel said to him, Malach Hashem, the angel of Hashem said to him, Amma hikita et atoncha ze shalosh regalim. For what reason did you beat your donkey this 3 times? 3 times. Hine, look, anochi yatzati, I went out, the Satan, as an adversary, ki yarat haderech lenegdi, because your way was obnoxious, and possibly, and Rashi's going to, I think, pull this out from the root retet, to tremble, right? So how that, in other words, your way, okay, well, the way it's translated is obnoxious before me, how to translate this, because the Hebrew is a little bit difficult, but Rashi is going to pull this out for us. So let's take a look at how he says this. Here we go. Ki yaret or yarat, just make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yarat. Ki yarat haderech lenigdi. So he says, Rabbeinu Chachmei HaMishnah, our sages, the sages of the Mishnah in Tractate Shabbat, page 105, Darshuhu, they interpreted as a notarikon, right, as shorthand. That is, that these letters, the Yud, the Resh, and the Tet, right, are part of a shorthand expression, Yar'a, Ra'ata, Natata. So it's that this appears to be referring to the donkey, I believe, right? So in other words, she saw, she, she was afraid, she saw a ra'ata, natata, and she couched, right? She turned aside. Bishvil shahaderech lenegdi, because this way that you're going was against me. In other words, God saying that's why the donkey did what it did. At least that's how I'm trying to understand this particular passage. Klomar, that is to say, let's see, liknati ulahakniteni. So he says, in other words, what you were doing was to provoke me and to anger me. God speaking to Balaam. Ulefi mashma'o, and according to its implication, ki charad, let me see. Oh, yes. Now he's explaining this yarat as to tremble, right? That the way trembled against me. Lashon retet, it has to do the meaning of a word retet, that means to tremble. Ki ra'iti bal haderech, that I saw the person who was going this way, shecharad, this, in other words, Balaam, right? The one who was the wayfarer, shecharad umaher, in other words, he was trembling out of speed, right? In other words, how eager he was to provoke me. So umaher haderech shehu lachasi, in order to make me angry. Ulaham roti, and in other words, although I'm putting it this way, to alter me, lahamrot means to sort of turn aside, to do something different, to try, and in this particular case, to suggest that God was in fact in favor of this in some way, but against what God really wanted. So it's like when a person tries to, when they know someone else doesn't really want them to do something, but they try to suggest that actually they do, right? Umikra katsarhu, and he says this is an elliptical verse. There are words left out here. Kamo, and he gives an example of other elliptical verses in the second book of Samuel, chapter 13. Vatechal David, and David, I believe, means maybe to begin, although no, to end, something like this. But the point is, we're talking about David's emotions. Okay, Lishna Acharina, another interpretation. Yarat lashon ratzon. Interestingly enough, this root yarat can also have the meaning of desire, right? And pleasing, something like that, which is in a sense just the opposite of what we're saying here. But let's see how we can play this out. And he says, and in this sense, Eov, we've got the book of Job, chapter 16. Va'al yedei yesharim, and through the wicked, yarteni, he makes me happy. Interesting. What do we mean? Mifayes umenachem ototi, that God appeases and he comforts me, God comforts me, al yedei risharim, by means of the wicked, she'enan ela maknitim, that the wicked who only try to provoke me. In other words, what we're saying here is, what Job is saying here is that he sees how the wicked, that God, I believe that what Job is saying is that he's saying that God somehow gives him the satisfaction of the fact that these wicked people are overcome. Something like that. I see I have a chat. Let me see what this is. Okay. Thanks. All right. Going on. Okay, next verse. So this is. I'm sorry. This is quite challenging, right? Okay, let's keep going. Vatir ani ha'aton, and this is again the angel is still speaking to Balaam here. The aton, the donkey, saw me, vatet lefanai, and turned away from me. Ze shalosh rikalim. These 3 times. Ulai natata mi panai. Were it not for the fact that she turned away from me, from my presence, excuse me, ki ata, that indeed now gam otcha harati, I would have killed you also, for ota hechayeti, and I would have left her alive. So there's a lot implied in this particular statement. So again, Balaam's really getting a mouthful here. Let's take a quick look. Let's see if we can. This is fairly lengthy. So maybe we will stop here today, and we'll work on this tomorrow and be able to look at the Rashi as well. So I'm going to put a little marking in here, and I'll stop the share. And let's see here. We're on this particular verse. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. And while we're still on the record, if anybody would like to comment or anything.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Sure, Harlan.
It seems like the donkey saved Balaam's life because the angel was ready to kill him.
Yes.
and the donkey saved his life, and Balaam didn't realize that.
Right. And not only did he not realize that he was smacking the donkey,
Yeah,
beating the donkey that was actually saving his life. Right. So you can ask yourself, after, if Balaam's hearing the angel telling him this, how might Balaam be feeling? And how is this looking in front of those chieftains? Right. So, I mean, this is a mess. He's winding up with quite a mess here. So, yeah. We'll continue this tomorrow. I'm going to stop the recording now.